reading today comes from 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5 through 14. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I should give you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant, my father David, because he walked before you in faithfulness and righteousness and in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne today. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, although I am only a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in, and your servant is in the midst of the people whom you have chosen, a great people, so numerous they cannot be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, able to discern between good and evil. For who can govern this great people of yours?" It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. God said to him, "Because you have asked this and have not asked for yourself long life or riches or for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, I now do according to your word. Indeed, I give you a wise and discerning mind. No one like you has been before you, and no one like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor all your life. No other king shall compare with you, if you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked. Then I will lengthen your life." The word of God for the people of God.
In 1979, 78 probably, in direct response to the release of and the success of Star Wars, 20th Century Fox needed to respond. They knew that they wanted to respond to Star Wars and to the rising popularity, the popularity of science fiction. Science fiction was back. Star Wars was a hit. Fox wanted to respond to that, and there was one science fiction script on the shelf at 20th Century Fox. It had been on that shelf for a couple of years already. It was called Memory, and about a space crew that wakes up in the dead of space. They wake up from their coma that is required for space travel in this world. There's no warp drive, there's no wormholes, there's no way to get around space travel in this world. It just takes a really, really long time. So the people have to go into a coma to make it work, and they travel for years, and they wake up early from this coma, and they discover an alien species. 20th Century Fox hired a young man by the name of Ridley Scott, who gave us Gladiator and Black Hawk Down and Thelma and Louise, by the way, which is weird on the list of Ridley Scott movies. Gladiator 2, Gladiator, Black Hawk Down, and the Alien franchise, and Thelma and Louise. And so when Ridley Scott came on, the Alien, it was changed from Memory to Alien. Ridley Scott helped with the designs for the actual Alien in the movie Alien. And Fox responded to Star Wars with an R-rated science fiction horror movie called Alien, which was also an absolute hit. You all went to see it. I wasn't alive yet. I just want to throw that out there. But y'all went to see Alien. You saw it. It did well in the theaters. Okay, but for this week, I don't need any help with Star Wars. I watched a lot of Star Trek, but this one I needed help with. And so I'm going to invite our keyboardist and one of our worship leaders, Mackenzie Reed, to help us get into this world, but because she is the expert on this subject. Please come forward. The resident geek, if you will, on this subject. Please. So this is going to be partly, this is a little bit prepared and a little bit not, which is fine because Mackenzie is also an improviser, so that will be good. So you know this world better than I do, I think. I saw Aliens first, and I think it was on, I should not have seen it. I was too young to have seen Aliens. Do you remember what did you see first? What was your first experience?
Yes. Actually, real quick, before I answer that, I'm going to steal your words from last week. Who has never seen 1 minute of Alien?
What? Okay, this is a big one.
I kind of figured, because it's, yes. I'm pretty sure I saw Aliens first. So Alien, singular, was the first movie. Aliens, plural, was the follow-up, the sequel. So I'm pretty sure I saw that one first. And for me, I don't have a distinct memory of like watching it for the first time and then instantly falling in love. It was something like I watched it and then it kind of stuck with me, and then I came back to it, and then I started watching the other movies in the mythos and got really, really hooked.
Okay, so let's get into it for all of those hands, because we're like 2 genres deep now.
Yeah.
So we're science fiction, which is already a cutoff for a lot of people, but science fiction horror is another. So Alien and Aliens. What is we about?
So there's a crew. Oh, there's a xenomorph. There's a crew, like a mining crew, just going out to do a job at a planet. They're in cryosleep, so in the coma that Brad mentioned. They're on their way back to Earth after just doing a job. These are not fighters. They're just blue collar workers. They're on their way back, and then the ship's AI wakes them up early and basically says, hey, there's a signal, there's a beacon coming from somewhere that we think is intelligent in origin. You need to go check it out. And of course, at first they're like, well, we're not equipped for that. But then the company they work for has an incentive, a financial incentive for doing such things. So they go out and they investigate. They come across some pretty mysterious, dark, gooey stuff. Someone gets infected. They come back to the ship, and then everything goes wrong. Basically, they are confronted with this monster for which there is no precedence. There's no schema. There's absolutely no information. And so that's Alien, and then Aliens. The follow-up is where Ellen Ripley, the main character, she is asked to kind of go help with this colony mission. Where the same company had like set up like human populations on this planet, and says, hey, we lost contact with them. It's weird. We don't know what's going on. And she's like, I know what's going on because you've been messing around with this alien. But then she eventually goes out and she saves the day.
So it's like this corporate boardroom decision, both times,
Yes.
to go into this space where our main character Ripley says both times, don't go in. She's the one who says, don't go in there. But she gets to say it in the movie for us instead of us yelling it from the audience. She says it. Don't go back to this planet. And so she puts herself in the cryo chamber in the life raft and is just floating in space. And they find her 57 years later, and they've received her message that said, don't go back here. And instead, they sent a colony, which, lo and behold, they now can't contact. This is the guy, or the girl, technically. This is a xenomorph. This is the alien from Alien. This is the tamest picture I could find of a xenomorph, because it's clearly just a guy in a suit standing straight up for a picture. So this is the infection, and they find this bunch of eggs in the first one, and that black goo gets into one of their crew members, and our hero Ripley says, no, you've been exposed to this thing, you can't come in the ship, it's quarantine procedures. She gets overruled again, and they let this person in after being exposed. And then, very famously, in all practical effects in the movie, a baby one of these jumps out of the chest of the person that was infected.
I like how you use the word jump and not.
It's not. I'm not going to say
Yeah,
like
I know.
like ripped its way through. It's just jumped out.
It's just boink.
But it's very within this world and within practical effects especially. It's an incredibly famous scene for to be done in 1978, and then it matures really, really quickly, and nobody listens to Ripley, and everybody dies but Ripley. That's Alien. And then 57 years later, of course, they want to go back because they've lost their investment, right, in this colony. So what do you send in next? You send in the Army next. You send the Marines next with an unfrozen Ripley. And everybody dies but Ripley.
And her cat.
Again.
Her cat also survives.
One of the original colonists. So what do you personally, what draws you into this universe?
So much. First of all, like I said, the main characters in this story, again, they're not Jedis, they're not Starfleet. These are just regular people who are going about doing their jobs, and then they come across something that is just utterly terrifying. And so for me, part of it is the monster. I firmly believe this monster is the most frightening monster in all of Christendom. And and you see real fear. You can tell by the sweaty close-ups. You see real fear in absolutely everybody, including Ripley. Even when she is acting bravely, you can tell she's utterly terrified. And I think that realness really, really drew me in. And it also drew me in because it was the first time that I saw a female lead in an action or horror or sci-fi genre that was kind of outside the male gaze, not just this Lara Croft character who's like, I got it, but somebody who was actually real, who I could relate to, and so that was impactful to me.
And I think in getting ready for this, I read that Ripley in the first one, and Ripley and two of the Marines in the second one, their gender is not mentioned in the script,
Yes.
and that was intentional.
Yes, absolutely.
And their names are their last names because they're Marines and they're on a crew, and so it's never Ellen. No one ever calls her Ellen.
Right.
Her name is Ellen, but
Right, yeah.
it's Ripley and one of the characters said, "You ever get mistaken for a man?" And the character says, "I don't know. Have you?" Which is a great line. Okay, so we have Alien, we have Aliens, we have Alien 3. Aliens is the perfect sequel title, right? Because we had one in the first one, a singular alien, and then there's more. And they couldn't keep going with that. Like the third one couldn't been called like Even More Aliens.
Yeah.
That was so Alien 3 is pretty dumb, except that Ripley ends up with one of these in her, gestating within her, and she kills herself instead of letting this company get their hands on it, because they still want to study it, they still want to turn it into a weapon or whatever they want to do with it, that she has kept telling them for decades now to not do. So she destroys herself and it instead of letting the corporation. But of course, it's a movie and it's popular, so there was another one after she kills herself, which
Alien-
of course they had to name
Resurrection.
Alien Resurrection. Because they brought her back.
Yeah.
Resurrection is just 90s,
Yeah.
90s fun, Terminator 2, Predator 2 style.
Yep.
There's cloning involved. But, you know, there's the alien stows away with them, and she ends up in another ship. She's actually a cloned version of herself. 80 years later or something.
Yeah.
And guess what? Everyone on the ship dies except for Ripley, because they let the alien loose. They're trying to use and breed and clone these things now. So it's just bad decision after bad decision from corporate. Anything that about Alien 3 or Resurrection?
Yes, and I think that's what you just said is so important. And so the xenomorph, the monster, is there's no question about its intentions. It is positively, chaotically evil and dangerous, like really hard to kill. So that's, I think cognitively, like that's very easy to kind of categorize, like, okay, this is bad. But what's also part of the world that's really fascinating is this company, Weyland-Yutani, the corporation, which, like you said, keeps trying over and over and over to harness it, to turn it into a bioweapon, to even use it to cure disease, to elongate human life, to try to capture some of its own almost immortality. So there's so much hubris, and pretty much I think my takeaway from Alien Resurrection is just, it was like yet another way that they were trying to tame something that is untamable.
And cloning, and it makes you really good at basketball.
Yes.
Because there's this one moment, like this cloned, she's got DNA from the original Ripley, and she's got DNA from this alien creature. And at one moment, because it's 1994, like there's a basketball court in this spaceship, and she's really good at basketball now, and she hits a backward shot.
Yep.
So then they do like back when we were doing all these mashups of famous movie characters. We put Freddy and Jason together, right, for a while, and so they did a couple of Alien versus Predator movies, right? So Predator is entirely different than the first Alien. It's an Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie. Everybody's huge. Everybody's saying catchphrases. But they put the on a separate planet that these two big alien monsters fight, because we love it. King Kong and Godzilla. We put them together in the same movie, but nothing happens. Like the plot isn't moved forward. So then Ridley Scott comes back, and he wants to take this story and give it more depth than it has ever had, and he gave us Prometheus, and that's when the mythos of Alien really gets deep.
Absolutely. And it's in the Alien fandom world, there are like mixed feelings about Prometheus, but at the end of the day, I think absolutely that's where it started to get a lot deeper. So kind of similar thing. There's a company, or the company that we've become familiar with in the other movies. There's also a group of scientists that they find evidence that the origin of humankind was from aliens, not this alien, but just like from aliens, like somewhere out there. They're like, cool, let's go find them. And then they go out there, they call them the engineers, and basically they find evidence for these engineers that they did in fact create humankind, but they also discover that these engineers had intended to annihilate humankind with this alien kind of DNA that they had manufactured. So it's very much an origin story. It also it taps into some other stuff too, because a key thing we haven't talked about yet in this story is there's always a synthetic, an android. There's an artificial person in every single one. And it's kind of like, you know how the Terminator movies, in the first Terminator, he's evil, but the second one, he's good. It's kind of like that in this mythos as well. In every single one, you're like, is the synthetic going to be a good guy or a bad guy? And this is also where we start to see, or we've seen seeds of this, but where the android is thinking for themselves and making decisions for themselves, and kind of behaving in this way, where they're very aware of like being created, but they feel more real than the humans do, and it really gets really interesting, and just kind of pokes at those deeper questions that I think we all think about.
So in 1979, we see this crew that's basically like truckers, like space truckers.
That would be a great movie.
But they're just these blue, and they follow this distress signal, and they find this crashed spaceship there. In the original, they find it inside the crashed spaceship. They see this giant humanoid thing on either a camera or a cannon or something. And so then in 2015, Ridley Scott finally gets to tell the story of how that spaceship got there, that the original crew found. And this is the guy the Prometheus guy, that the engineer, and so they were creating a biological weapon. They were creating a perfect biological weapon that became this xenomorph, and lo and behold, it wiped out their entire civilization except for one.
When will they learn? It's the same thing.
Stop messing with this thing. And it's just corporate decisions and military decisions over and over and over again to how can we use this to our benefit? How can we sell this? What are the benefits here? And our Ripley throughout is just like, there are none. You're all gonna die, and nobody listens to her. So last night, you went to when we decided to do this, by the way, when we decided to do this month, first of all, we didn't pick scriptures first, we picked the movies first, and then I went to the lectionary text and picked a selection from the lectionary text that I thought matched these sermons. So it's still a lectionary sermon. I picked Solomon asking for wisdom because Ripley has discernment throughout the entire, and nobody listens to the smart person in the room. And fear and horror movies does something to our wisdom. But I had no idea that there was an Alien movie being released this weekend while we were doing this sermon. So you saw it last night. You saw Alien Romulus.
Yes.
Last night. How was it?
It was very good. Jason and I are going back this afternoon to see it again. Partially because we enjoyed it so much, but also we're such nerds that we're like, we want to watch it again to kind of look for those details, so we can kind of figure out how it fits in the entire world. So
you just watch it first, and you're scared, and it's a horror movie, and then you can watch it again. You know when all the jumps are coming, and so you can actually all the story.
Pay attention to.
So is there theology here? This is a sermon. Right? This is the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ, right, Prof? So what is there a message here?
I can say that something for me personally, when I was younger, when I was a kid, I would look up at the night sky and feel both completely awestruck and completely terrified. There's this idea, I'm getting chills now actually, there's this idea of space, not just like, oh, the beauty of the solar system, but thinking about being out in outer space where there is nothing. There, it's not like being on an island somewhere where you're isolated, but there are other humans on this orb. And so I would think about that, and when I was really honest with myself, I would realize that if I were in outer space, that would be the only, maybe not the only time, but that would be a time that I would seriously doubt the existence of God and my connection to God. Because here, I can look at nature, I can connect with other people. There are all these signs, there are all these things that help keep me connected and keep me tethered. But when I think about being out there, and not even dealing with a monster, just being out in outer space, again, it fascinates me and it terrifies me. It still kind of freaks me out. And so I feel like it's not just fear of a creature or fear of an evil corporation that is just using you as a tool. It's this fear of disconnect. And a key feature of this world is that the reason why we have so many movies and novels and a video game where the same thing happens over and over again is because I think the vastness of space, because this company, they can go to a planet, they can send people there, and then everybody dies except for Ripley. But then there's so much distance between these planets that it's much easier to keep it quiet. So I think that, to me, that idea of just isolation and the fear of being disconnected, and what if I can't see any sign of God? What if I am in trouble? What if I am in danger? Where is my help coming from? And so, at least for me, that's my connection theologically to this.
And then that's beautiful. And then we get to experience that in a theater full of people with popcorn in our lap, right? So we get to see this disconnect between what the people are experiencing in the movie and what we're really afraid of, which I think is isolation. And we get to do that and feel that and experience that in community, right? And then we get to walk out of the theater, and if something happens to us emotionally and biologically, when we realize that we're not actually in danger, right? And so the jump scares and all that stuff, it releases actual hormones into our body. We're in fight or flight for a little bit. And then when our body realizes that the danger is not actually real, and we're serotonin and dopamine, and so we get our enjoyment from that. It's like laughing at a comedy. It's like going to a tearjerker when you want a good cry. It does something to us physically. And then getting to experience the isolation and the desolation through Ripley, that Ripley's experiencing. Because in every single one of these also, somehow the ship breaks down.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not just, they can't get away.
Right.
And so this idea of being trapped with this thing, and just, you have to go back in your pod and shoot yourself into space and hope somebody finds you at some point. But I think what draws us to these movies is that we get to experience that in community, knowing that we're surrounded by people, right? And I know this was weird, and I thank you very much. I hope that there's a whole bunch of people, $187 million worth of people went to see Alien in 1979, who find meaning and messages in this kind of stuff. So first of all, if you're one of them, welcome. There's a seat at this table for you. But thank you for letting us do this. We don't expect anyone to go out and watch and love science fiction horror after this. But I know this is a weird little sermon. This is the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and we're talking about an R-rated science fiction horror movie franchise.
I do want to say, I feel like we've done a good job giving an accurate description without traumatizing everyone with the actual gore and horror involved.
I think so. Does anybody know what the most repeated single phrase in all of Scripture is? In Hebrew and in Greek. It is some version of "do not be afraid." Fear not is the overwhelming message of the Bible. That's our sermon for this morning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting us do that. We have one more of these. I'm going to talk about Dune next week. If you are a fan of the novel, the epic novel, or the two new movies, you're going to love it. If you're a fan of the 1984 movie, you're not going to like it very much. But you should come just to see the sandworm that is being built for next Sunday morning. The message from Dune is next week. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Mackenzie, everybody.
Oh, thanks.
And by the way, our preludes and our postludes this month have been music from the movies. Most of them put together and arranged by Mackenzie. So that was great.